How did your relationship with Arbor begin? Eric Weitzig reached out to me and said, hey, we're interested in doing some graphics. And they had mocked up a couple things. And it was really just up to me to sort of approve those things, which is not something that I'm used to, right? So, it was a fairly smooth process and they liked some of my stuff already and it worked. And we kind of went with that. That would have been about 4 years back. Arbor is run like a family business with every person within the company planning career world and projects from learning about Kraus on down. What was your experience like working with the crew? Well, it's really been Eric and Nate, and I just have to say they've been incredible. I'm not down in Venice. I'm up here in Portland, but you're on the phone, you're on Zoom calls, you're on stuff, you're on email, and it's been pretty cool. What you see though is you see this exciting thing where, these guys are kind of taking off. They're very established. They're doing well. They're well respected, and they're trying to keep up with all of that stuff, all the social media and all the sort of just, stuff. And by the way, coming up with new things too, which has been exciting to see them come up with new stuff along the way. So yeah, it's been great. Until I got to meet everybody up close a couple years ago when I went down to Arbor, you get to see something that isn't this corporate, sort of overlord process. Bob trusts other people to make this stuff work. And I have to say, they do a great job, and it's loose, it's chill. When you go in there, it's not this place that's, all sweaty and stuff. I like that it felt like a skate shop that figured out how to go a lot bigger. Arbor is arguably the most environmental conscious brand. Our production is via 100% solar powered factory in Dubai using plant-based resins and so forth. Does the sustainable story help influence your story with Arbor? Well, not necessarily, because they came after me for certain graphics of mine that were sort of things that were working from year to year. And we would do a couple little tweaks and make them something a little bit new. But I think what I liked about this was that story went with their story, right? Those guys are taking great measures to do things right. It doesn't mean it's always, going to be easy to do, but they're doing it. And I just really appreciated that when I started to talk with them and how they do what they do and how they stand by it. It's not an easy thing to do. So if they're able to get close and keep that commitment, it's a pretty admirable thing. So, I really feel good when I see this stuff come out with these guys because they're a nice group of people and they're working hard to try to do it right. And it's not easy. Arbor spearheads so many programs to give back to our surf, skate, and snow roots. Growing up an avid skater and eventual snowboarder, these factors come into play with your decision to collaborate. I don't even know about that stuff. Okay, next question. Where do you begin in designing a board graphic? Well, I think with these, because what they did was they kind of used some stuff of mine that were kind of greatest hits in some respects, right? And then we would just tweak them a little bit just to make them, sort of new for Arbor's line. But like in anything, when you talk through the process of like, hey, where are you guys going? What have you done? What do you want to do? You take a look at all those things, you factor them all in, and then you start to execute, just making sure like whatever you did the last 3 years, let's make sure that we're doing something a little bit different, right? So I guess the key word here is trying to be accommodating to the client. It's one thing for me to make a bunch of stuff, send it on down to Venice. It's another thing to be guided, to have a little bit of strategy, to understand where they were coming from, and then make those moves accordingly, right? So I think that's really with any board graphic. It's like, well, what's the brief? What are you guys thinking? And then here, let me give you some options, see how it could kind of flesh out. And if this works, cool, let's go for it. If not, kind of a little bit back to the drawing board, right? But that's not really what happened here. Those guys had seen my stuff for a while and then came after me and said, hey, these things are a bit timeless within what you do. And we think there's some more legs outside of the realm of like, you making stickers and stuff, which is what I liked about it. I make all these things and sometimes they only show up on some dumb sticker. To see them be on a snowboard and then eventually some products and some goodies. I dig the idea that there's other life for these things to be had outside of whatever goofy little realm that I'm so comfortable within, which is, making something, selling it on the road, going to door with it, all the basics of the Draplin Design Company, How do you pick the color palette for the design? And this goes right into that next one. Arbor uses a variety of woods in the production process. So yeah, number one is you have to work with what Arbor's putting out there. So these guys will show me the sort of basics of it. And then we have to kind of make decisions against that. And I really enjoy that because you kind of know what you're going to get and you kind of know where they've been. And then there's a chance to work around it a little bit and work with it. So I don't push on that too hard. What I'm more interested in is that they took the measures and the pains to make sure that the thing was done dare I say, kind of refreshingly ethical. That's not easy to do. And if it means compromising some of my design, that's icing on the cake. They baked a good cake, right? So that's really what kind of grabs me, is that this stuff isn't all that rough to design against, because, when people learn the story, that becomes a big, big thing in their decision, So we just have to make sure it works with that and stands out from the rest of their line. The Shiloh packs that signature DDC graphical color palette and design set. Arbor gives you free reign to design the board and the guidelines. Yeah, like I said, they kind of mock some stuff up. It's just a matter of me kind of seeing it all and how it worked within their line and then tweaking it just a little tiny bit. And I'm just not used to that. I mean, you have to understand, they understand exactly what they need to do, right? Like, that's cool. Way better than I would. So to be sort of guided, like, hey, well, you think this one's a bit of a slam dunk? What do you think? I really trust them, because they're the ones in the front lines of this stuff and understand, sort of what is and isn't going to kind of work. So I'm just kind of along for the ride in some respects. Years and years ago, some of the last boards I did were for Forum Snowboards for Evan and Jared, and they'd give you a blank canvas and a couple quick ideas, and it'd be up to me to fire a bunch of stuff back to Paul Brown, and it was kind of quick and from the hip. Here with Arbor, they kind of already know what they're going to kind of do, at least the wood patterns, the way the stuff is exposed on the top sheet, and then you just sort of design around that. Growing up a skater, was important to have your board be a twin shape. All the shapes that they make, a lot of them aren't for me, or at least the idea of what I would have liked when I was a kid. But that changed for me when I went in there and I saw all the different kids coming into Venice and how they were purchasing stuff. Some of these kids were literally dripping. They just got done surfing or swimming or being in the water, and they're in there in little bikinis and surf trunks and shit, and they're riding these things out of there with bare feet. And that was just really interesting for me to see. That's not the skateboarding I remember as a kid or grew up in or maybe sort of long for. But by the way, it's just as valid as whatever idea I have of, the sort of authentic shit. What does that even mean, So when you go all the way down to that cool, pointy little, it's kind of a retro shape one. When it goes back down to that little retro shape one, I love that thing because it's just as cool sort of on your wall and or, doing some kind of sidewalk surfing, no shoes on or something. It's traditional to that, and that works for where they're at. So I appreciate that, Who's the end consumer that you'd like to see riding your board? Well, that's kind of a fun one. I would say someone who does the research, is sort of concerned about how these things are made, nerds out on their process, appreciates what it takes for those guys to walk that walk and actually, deliver on it. And then, goes out and sure, kicks the world's ass up at the hill, but doesn't need to come back in 8 months to get the next one. It's like, these things are going to last they're built beautifully. They're going to last for a while. On a bigger note, there's something cool about that, getting these things, living in them, using them until they're dead, and then going back, because I remember a lot of the stuff when we were in the industry was kids were turning things over maybe a little too quick. Where I'm from in Michigan, the first board I bought, I used for 3 winters because that's just all I could afford. So I like the idea of someone having to kind of pop for one of these nice boards and make that decision. They like what it's about. Hopefully they dig the graphic, and then they use the hell out of that thing for a while. I don't think that's any different with any other project, but here there's something cool about people getting really pumped up about Arbor's commitment to this really sort of specialized plate. I just appreciate that with these guys. It's not easy. It's not easy to do. All right. Okay. There are many great snowboards on the market, and I still believe so many of the buying decisions are based on graphics. Agree or disagree? I don't know, because I'm 48 years old, and I think if anything, if I went and picked, it would be based on, what fits my musk ox size body, number one. But beyond that, if I'm feeling wild, then you get wild. Hopefully they just have, if you're feeling, conservative with the colors and things, hopefully they have that option for you. Once you get past the technical stuff, if you want loud, you get loud. If you want quiet, hopefully they have quiet, right? And I think that's why, when we used to work on the customs for Burton, it was kind of known up to that point that they were switching a little bit, and it wasn't about the latest, hottest, coolest thing in that size or that sort of shape or that whatever the sort of technical specifications were. It was more like, how do we build something for someone who doesn't want a bunch of noise on their top sheet? Some people just want a clean surface. I dig that. There's nothing wrong with that. When I finally got to go work for Ride Snowboards, they were very tuned in to okay, here's the wild stuff, here's the little bit more subdued stuff. And I dug that because, that's kind of the way it should be. When you're younger, you want the crazy shit. And as you get older, hopefully there's there's some more conservative stuff to pick from. Right? Okay. What are some of your favorite skateboard or snowboard graphics from over the years? Going all the way back to when I started in skateboarding, it was being grabbed by all the Jim Phillips NHS stuff, all the Santa Cruz and Santa Monica Airlines. And I think back, it's like the Jason Jesse Sun God, and of course, Corey O'Brien, all the stuff with Jeff Grosso, of course. That stuff just was colorful, fun, kind of dangerous, cool, looked great as a sticker, looked great, obviously on these boards. And then that spilled over. Once that stuff kind of became a little more mainstream, even the stuff that came out of that was different. Like there was a brand called Lucero, which was John Lucero, and they were all about curb skating and just like simple street skating. I really identified with that because it's kind of all we had in Michigan, right? So I had a couple of those Luceros for a while and dug the sort of shitty, crusty quality of them. There was just something kind of unapologetic about some of those early Luceros. I dug that. I went right into World Industries. I had a couple of those Jason Lees with the cat in the hat. I liked the shape. I liked, their sort of story. So yeah, people pick based on that stuff. I like the idea that of someone bucking the system. So after a while, Santa Cruz kind of, like a Powell or something, just kind of felt like everyone's got one of those things, I liked seeking out the weird shit and then sort of being treated to cool, sketchy, kind of crusty graphics was just like sort of this cool icing on the cake. You know what I mean? Any advice you can offer for young artists who want to get into designing board graphics? Well, get out there and enjoy your youth. Go up there, get the pass, move to a mountain, skateboard every day with your buddies or whatever it's going to be, and understand the language and understand all the weird little pressure systems and shit that go with this stuff. No one's just going to hire you just to do awesome right away. You have to prove it. You have to show it. You have to be able to work with people. And if you've got it where they're calling you for what you do and how you do it, well, that's a really lucky position to be in. It might be the other way around where you have to kind of make yourself known, take some punches, make no money, get grinded down. That was my route, was definitely the latter. I didn't know the right people. So the idea was anyone who gave me attention, anything, was still valid to me. The crustiest of stuff was still valid. So whoever you're looking at as the coolest shit out there, understand that's a bit of a Mount Everest away from you. But when you realize that people actually making this stuff are a bunch of scrubs on a beach, it kind of will mellow you out. But don't lose that sort of division between like, I'm this young kid looking up the mountain to the top, these guys are making all this cool stuff. Don't lose that because it keeps you hungry. So, all right, I'm talking too much now. Mount Bachelor used to be your stomping grounds. What type of resort and or rider is the Shiloh? I have no idea. Jesus Christ. It's ideal for places with snow, okay? I see the Shiloh comes in both camber and rocker shape. Which do you prefer and why? Don't know. Hopefully there's enough within this wonderful defecation of words out of my mouth into this little thing for you guys to work with here. So sorry you had to listen to me. All right. Bye.